All right. We are live. I hope I didn't mess that up. I think I might have, but we'll find out. There's only one way to find out. We're going to do it live. This is the PFF forecast. It is Wednesday, September 20th. It is about 4:08 p.m. Pacific time, and it's going to be a great show. We thought about spending a full 90 minutes on Kareem Hunt and Cam Akers and their impact on the league. We're not going to do that. We're going to talk SGP's live game betting plan, our locks of the week, of course, and we'll start off with some injuries. And then at the end, we're going to reveal the PFF guess the lines, set the lines, whatever you want to call it. The contest we're running, we're going to show the leaderboards both for week 2, who won the most money off of their initial spreads, and who was the most accurate for week 3. So with that said, let's Welcome in, everybody. I do have to ask just one quick question of you guys, which is, I was very happy for myself when I snagged Kareem Hunt for a fraction of the price of Jerome Ford. I mean, it was actually comedic. Do you guys think he's actually going to play?
I think it's like 75% Ford, 25% Hunt backfield personally. But, obviously you don't want to blow 100% of your fab on one player. But no, I think it is Ford's backfield.
Yeah, I'm kind of nervous as well. Okay, this is the PFF forecast. I'm George, joined by Brad and Judah. If you're new, welcome. If you're a longtime listener, we love you. We appreciate you. Welcome in. Let's start off as we usually do here, looking ahead to week 3. And I felt like there were a lot of injuries last week. It feels like there are a few less this week, but that's probably just my ignorance. Brad, why don't you take us kind of around the league with the kind of big injuries and what we either know or are yet to learn about them?
Yeah, so first we'll start tomorrow night's game between the Giants and the 49ers. On the Giants side, they're pretty banged up. Left tackle Andrew Thomas, edge rusher Azeez Ojulari, running back Saquon Barkley, and guard Ben Bredesen are all supposed to be out for that game. For the Niners, I think the only big one there is maybe Brandon Ayuk, was kind of in and out of the game against the Rams on Sunday. He's listed as questionable, maybe does play. As for other big names across the league, particularly for betting and props, what we touch on here, Kendre Miller should be the RB1 in New Orleans. Jamal Williams not going to play. I know Tony Jones came in, had 2 touchdowns. I think he also averaged like 3.5 yards a carry. And obviously they drafted Kendre Miller top 75 or whatever for a reason. So should get his debut. Guys that I think are going to play finally, Christian Watson, I think is going to play for Green Bay, make his season debut. Devontae Adams is fine for the Raiders. He will play. And then quick rundown. No practice today, but we don't know the status yet. OBJ, Bryce Young, Amari Cooper, Amon-Ra St. Brown not only didn't practice, it also sounds kind of bad. I didn't like the way Dan Campbell spoke about Amon-Ra. Zay Jones didn't practice, Austin Eckler, and then also Jalen Waddle. Mike McDaniel was like, I don't have a timeline. I don't really care. He's in concussion protocol. He gets back when he gets back. I also didn't love the way he spoke about Jalen Waddle.
It's not great. I have a feeling that Brandon Ayuk is not going to play. It feels to me like as a 10-point favorite, and they're been pretty dominant. Like, why would you risk it? That's my kind of lean there, which I think is a bummer because it's I think it's a great opportunity for the entire Niners offense. So that's an interesting one for us to think about, particularly as we look at locks of the week and potential opportunities for people. I'm going to tease something here, but our super lock of the week was TJ Hawkins season, and we may have another tight end in the offing. Just throwing it out there. Judah, you hear those? I know that we had a lot on the Dolphins, obviously, on Sunday night. So maybe the Waddle one, but what are kind of the big ones that stuck out to you?
Yeah, I was going to lead with Waddle, but honestly, River Craycraft and Braxton Berrios were running wide open on Sunday night. If anything, I'm just like, okay, maybe this is the same game parlay opportunity where like the market's going to price in like, oh, maybe this is a big downgrade from Jalen Waddle to whether it's River Craycraft or Braxton Berrios. And like, if we get like some juicy alt lines there, that might be a parlay worth building. But I think that injury, and I honestly like, I think Andy Dalton would be a pretty big one. The market moved ever so slightly from like 5.5 to 6. I'd argue that the Panthers are much better with Andy Dalton than with Bryce Young. So I think there could be some value there if Bryce Young actually does not play. But it's difficult on Wednesday. Like, we don't really know no practices, how that's going to kind of play out by Friday. I think we'll have a pretty good sense. But those are two I'm definitely looking out for.
The Dalton one is really interesting. I expected it to move the other way. We'll talk about that game, I think, certainly here in a second. But yeah, that the way Bryce Young looked on Monday night was a little concerning, I would say. People aren't talking about it as much because of what's happening with Brad's Chicago Bears and the disaster that is. Look, by the way, I talk about this guy a bunch. He does great content, JT O'Sullivan in the QB school. He had a 96-minute review of Justin Fields' week 2 game, and it has 206,000 views. It's absolutely amazing. We are a week away, Brad, from Bears fans descending on the PFF mock draft simulator for the second straight year, in a way like we've never seen before. It's going to be great.
Tied that in lovely because they also have Carolina's pick, so the Bears might be picking in the top 5 twice. If things continue with both of these buildings, yeah, I'm only I think 8 of the 206,000 views myself.
I was gonna say you have 206,000 computers. I'm impressed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I only watched it a couple times. Yeah, they also have no one fantasy relevant, but they have some injuries too. Left tackle Braxton Jones on IR, which is not great. Yeah, that is going to be a bloodbath.
Yeah, I would assume a lot of bets on it's short of 13 still, I believe.
12 and a half on DraftKings.
Kansas City Chiefs. By the way, I'll share one nugget for you guys, which is really funny. So I'm looking at metrics for PFF website and app, and I see this spike on mock draft simulator usage, and I'm like, oh, what is that? What time of the day? What day is that? It's Sunday at 2 p.m. Pacific time. Can you guys guess what was happening Sunday at 2 p.m. Pacific time?
Is Arizona in the Pacific time zone? Oh, go ahead.
Well, yeah, that game, the New York Giants Arizona Cardinals game started, and you would think Arizona Cardinals fans are the ones using it. No. The New York Giants fans are down 21 donut to Arizona, and they're on there taking Caleb Williams left, right, and center. It was an astronomical spike. It was like
that's
600% versus the prior year. Okay, we are going to get into live betting strategy and some same game parlays as we do every single week with Judah. Judah, you were painfully, I would say, close again this week. The one that kind of sticks out in my mind is that Washington Commanders SGP. I had like multiple friends hit me up and be like, yo, they sent me screenshots. They're like, we were so close, man. What happened? But if I know you, you are undeterred.
That's for sure. I mean, thankfully, I was not actually watching. I had a 55-1. I love when I can get a 2-leg really deep play, but I had a 55-1 Sam Howell 300 yards in Washington -5.5. Howell, of course, finished with 299 yards. And then the Broncos covered on that Hail Mary. That like if that 5.5 would have covered, I would have been watching every single possible play, trying to issue like every stat correction. I also had some less bullish Howell, like 250s and Washington -2.5 too. It was a little gut wrenching, but as you say, just we're gonna power right through, get back to our winning ways, and honestly, like. If our 55-1s are, coming up 1 yard short and a Hail Mary away, it means we're probably doing something right. And these are going to fall in the coming weeks.
Yeah, that's $299. I bet you could have found an extra yard there. The problem is you'd spend all that time and really all you'd find is like, oh, maybe it should have been $298.
Yeah, exactly. There was one, I was getting ready for this in the New Orleans Carolina game. I had some like Carr and New Orleans spreads, and there was a ball that Derek Carr threw to his running back that was charted as a rush. And I saw like I was getting like very, very close to his like 225 prop, and I was like, I'm ready to wage war. Like they charted this as a rush. It was definitely a forward pass, but thankfully he hit Chris Olave at the end, and we didn't have to worry about that.
Yeah, it didn't come close. Okay, so let's start with some SGPs. Why don't we? And talk about SGPs, some alt lines. So your article comes out every single week. It is on pff.com. If you are a member of the printing press and the Forecast podcast, you are going to get a sneak peek at what you're thinking of cooking up this week. But of course, you can access that piece of content on pff.com. You can also find it always gets shared in the PFF Forecast Discord, which you should certainly join if you are not there already. Judah, why don't you get us started? What do you think in SGP wise this week?
Yeah, we'll start with maybe the one I'll write up. We're going to build this in a same game parlay variation, and we'll also just kind of use it as an alt line. And that's going to be some bullish Eagles spreads. And we're going to get creative here depending on the props. I think it's going to include some rushing unders from Tampa Bay. And if we can get some sack props in there, we will absolutely be doing that. The thesis here is that Baker Mayfield actually is a kind of okay quarterback throwing from a clean pocket. This shouldn't be news. I mean, he struggled a bit last year, but was actually pretty good from 2018 through 2020. And again, in 2023, has been very good so far from a clean pocket. He's thrown from clean pockets at the 4th highest rate. This is what happens when you play the Vikings and the Bears. Not exactly great pass rushes. Throw in the mismatch on the interior of the Philadelphia Eagles defensive line and the Tampa Bay offensive line, and that is just screaming for a disaster of interior pressure. I mean, you've got Jalen Carter, absolute beast, going up just against a putrid interior for Tampa Bay. If you just look at like the PFF grades, we've got a 59, a 52, and a 49 on the interior. That is going to manifest its way in, I think, two main directions. And the first is that I don't see any way that the Bucs can get any run game going, which I think is going to set up a bunch of kind of 3rd and 8s and 3rd and 9s early. I mean, the Bucs run game doesn't need a stout Philly defensive front, which I do think will be a theme this year, that Philly has a great run defense, but I expect a lot of obvious passing situations, and I expect Jalen Carter to have like 10 pressures in this game. And we talk about this all the time in the offseason. Baker Mayfield has a crazy high pressure to sack ratio. I expect the Bucs to kind of be more like that offseason team we were projecting earlier, of just a ton of sacks. And I think when you kind of play out that game script, it can go a bunch of different directions. The Eagles are a team you want to be backing playing from ahead. I don't exactly see this defense as one that can stop the Philly run. Not that anyone really can. I mean, I saw some crazy stat, like they haven't had a carry for a loss this year. Philadelphia just absolutely mauls their opponents in the trenches. I expect that to continue, and we'll be building a bunch of kind of creative, using some sack props, especially on the interior, and then also just combining and playing a game script of the Eagles leading by a lot, and then how that kind of works with rushing attempt unders, if Tampa Bay is playing from behind, etc. I just like, on one foot, just like these teams are not in the same tier, right? Like Philadelphia, like we're having conversations about like whether they should be tier 1 or tier 2. The Bucs are not even close to that, and we're talking about a line that's approaching 3.5 here. I think it's a really, really bad mispricing, and it's a horrible matchup for the Bucs, and we're going to look to capitalize that in a number of different ways.
I could not agree more with every single thing you just said, particularly just the game spread itself, but also just real quick. This sounds dumb, and I'm not trying to be anti-Baker or whatever, but he almost had, in the equivalent of turnover-worthy plays, the amount of sacks he barely escaped against the Bears. And look, to his credit, he evaded them, he got out of them, but like he could have been sacked 5 times. He just, he made some nice plays, scampered out of it. It was like, to me, it was okay. His internal clock is still slow. He might get sacked a lot of times because he's building confidence off of this performance. And the Eagles defensive line is obviously playing a different sport than the Bears defensive line is currently.
Yeah, he's been, this year. So if we look at this year, he's been pretty good under pressure, relatively, right? A 69 passing grade, 70 passing grade is not terrible. But I think what we've seen is that he's faced 2 teams thus far who weren't really putting him under pressure, right? Like he was under pressure, but it wasn't anywhere near the extent that you would kind of be expecting. And I think indicative of that, and you can get this on pff.com on premium stats. So look at this time to throw. His time to throw and under pressure this year has been almost 4 seconds. Okay, so that pressure is not happening until super late in the shot clock. His pressure to sack ratio only 3.7% so far this year. He has 123 passer rating under pressure this year. This is not Baker Mayfield. Okay, this is Baker Mayfield. Okay, where his pressure grade is 30, right? And his pressure to sack ratio is 34.7. So like I think your point about what we've seen out of Baker Mayfield and this team, it just isn't really indicative. And they have faced such an easy schedule as far, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. So I absolutely love it. I'm curious about the sacks. So obviously Jalen Carter is the big one. Is there a player that we think might have longer odds? I know that the Eagles generally kind of rotate their guys in. Is there anyone that you think is going to, if I'm looking to play something that's super long, that you would mix in?
I'm going to expect that we'll get some Jordan Davis props at like plus 190, which is already long. And like, I honestly like Jordan Davis also is an appealing one to me. And like even Josh, but I can see this as like a real 7-8 sack game, especially if you build out the game script of like Eagles go out from ahead early and just like the Bucs have to completely abandon the run. And then the Eagles are just teeing off on this Bucs offensive line. Like if you build out that game script, that's when I think you can get really bullish with the sacks. But I mean, Josh Sweat's been a terrific edge player now for a couple of years, and just like the interior of this Bucs O-line against Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis is a huge mismatch, and I think we're going to get some pretty great odds on that.
I would just jump in while you get ready to make fun of me and my girlfriend. I don't even know what that means at the end there. I read that, but I also love the interior for sure. I also think Luke Gadecki against. I think he'll see more Hassan Reddick because Josh Sweat dominated the Vikings left tackle on Thursday. If he gets Tristan Wirfs, I think you bet the other edge rushers, maybe Reddick or whoever. All right, go ahead, George. What do you got?
No, just keep going. I'm going to let it flow.
No, that was all I had. Just maybe, edge rushers that aren't going against Tristan Wirfs, and obviously the interior guys I agree with.
I'm gonna weave in my making fun of you during the ad reads, see if people can catch it. So this week's ad read is going to be specifically geared at making fun of my co-host. Okay, we talked about Eagles and Bucs there. Like that one a lot. Any other SGP angles that you're thinking about, Judah, that you want to use?
I'm going to go back to the well. Sam Howell, my guy, he hurt us, it hurt me last week, but this is the spot. I'm going to back them again. I think this is actually the broader theme of what we just talked about, and a lot of kind of the research we've done this past offseason and talked about on this podcast, which is like trying to find the circumstances which play into certain quarterback traits and like which matchups are going to kind of elevate certain traits over others. And I think Sam Howell, what we've learned of him is that he can obviously throw the ball extremely well, and the Achilles heel is that he's going to take too many sacks and kind of create sacks for himself. A matchup against Buffalo, I think, mitigates that. We've now seen this. It started in the second half of last season when Von Miller went down. This is a team that cannot generate quick pressure. They've generated quick pressure at the third lowest rate in the NFL, and I think that means that in a game against the like middling pass rush, we should reasonably expect Howell to kind of take like 4 to 6 of these like clean pockets, or maybe it's a little high. Maybe it's like 5 to 8 of these clean pockets and kind of turn them into negative plays just by his own will. I think that base rate gets a lot lower in games against teams that can't really generate a quick pass rush. And that means more time and more plays for him to kind of throw downfield. All of this comes with the expectation of his passing prop right now is 220. That's extremely low. It's one of the lowest in the slate. The Bills defense is still living off a reputation that I think was developed over the first half of 2022 when they did have a dominant pass rush and when things were clicking. And they have a pass rate, a very high pass rate over expected. Washington does. They are more than happy to let Sam Howell rip it, and he wants to throw downfield. That's what he wants to do. We've seen this back to his college days, his early. I think the week 1 game against Arizona was game plan specific, but he certainly has a tendency to want to throw downfield. And I am looking for, in this same game parlay setup, as few things to go right as possible and to get kind of the best odds for that. And when the prices are so low, and we really don't know that much about Sam Howell, but his tendencies like definitely point to having a fat right tail. And it's like, if I just need my guy to get like 300 yards and Washington to cover, or just like Washington to win, even, you can get like, yes, that's a long shot, but like you can also hedge out of that. But if you can get like 50-1 and like a reasonable case for Sam Howell, and like for all we know, by like week 13, we're going to be talking about Sam Howell as having one of the highest passing props in the league. Like, we wouldn't have expected that from Tua Tagovailoa last year, but that's exactly what happened. It's the same sort of thing, like trying to build in some sort of projection, realizing that like it might not happen, but like if I am right, I'm going to really, really capitalize on that thing. And I think the matchup really sets up well for Howell, and the market's pricing in uncertainty, and we can kind of use the tails as a way to capitalize on that.
So are you real quick again? Sorry, George, but love that one as well. Leonard Floyd might not play in this game. Safety Micah Hyde might not play in this game, and their defense is already, like you said, not that great to begin with. So it all aligns there. And then obviously the Bills are going to score, so they're going to keep throwing, you'd imagine, throughout much of the game. So anyway, I like that one a lot too.
I was just going to say I hate this one. I also don't like your hat. And, 7th grade called and wants its facial hair back.
Do you like my shirt? Ooh, that's tough.
You like that? You like that? Can the peanut gallery please let me know how they feel?
Yeah, Posmo. My room is super dark. I have no statement there. There's no light bulb in I don't understand why. So I have 3 lights shining directly in my face. I can barely see, just for you, Posmo. It's all for you.
All right. Before we move on to live betting game plan, want to tell you guys about AG1, Athletic Greens, as it is known, or previously was known. And what AG1 will do for you is get your diet in the right place. It'll make sure you've got the supplements and nutrients that you need on a daily basis, so you don't have to worry about going to the grocery store and finding all of that crap in the grocery aisles, and then making sure you're cooking all of these nutritious meals. You don't have to be Tony P in DC. You can just go get AG1 and be in great shape. Do you guys know who Tony P in DC is, by the way? Have you found this account? Okay. Let me put you guys on something. If you're out there and you've not discovered Tony P in DC on Instagram, you're welcome. But this is still an AG1 read, and I highly recommend it. I use it, especially when I'm traveling. People don't like to talk about this, but like knowing when you're going to have to take a shit is super important. Poop, whatever you want to call it. And hey, it helps you out, helps you stay regular. You don't have to worry about like, did I eat enough fibrous foods while I'm on vacation or while I'm traveling? Just have a nice travel pack of AG1 ready to go, and you'll be rocking and rolling. Makes you feel a heck of a lot better. Your energy sustains throughout the day as well. So I can't recommend it enough. You do have to make sure that you can drink it. It's not for the faint of heart. Okay, this doesn't taste like chocolate. Okay, but if you're going to drink it because it tastes good, you're in it for the wrong reasons anyways. It doesn't taste that bad. You can stomach it. It's drinkag1.com/PFF. And if you go to that link and then purchase it through that link, you will get a year's supply of vitamin A plus 5 free travel packs. It's a great deal. The travel packs are absolute money. So go to drinkag1.com/PFF. All right. Live betting. I will not lie. I spent this past week really thinking about live betting in terms of what kinds of information do live bettors could we give to live bettors to help inform them during games. So I was watching these games, and Judah, it's amazing how much you talk about just player usage and kind of how things are going in a particular game. What I discovered is how hard it is to track that across multiple games, like especially in that early slate. Like I was thinking about you trying to do this and trading games live, and I was like, oh my God, I cannot do this. I'm having trouble kind of focusing on one. So please put us on some game here in terms of where we can look, where we can focus and be prepared instead of just kind of watching and hoping.
Yeah, the main one I'm going to be watching is Minnesota and Los Angeles. I think a lot of the NFL right now is just like marred and like uncertainty. Yeah, that's always true of like week 3. We don't really know who's good. We're like balancing off-season priors with like regular season performance. Like who knows how good the Rams are? Who knows how good the Bengals are? Like you can say this about a lot of teams. I think the teams we know most about are probably the Chargers and Vikings, right? These are teams who are going to have really, really good offenses and really bad defenses. And like we're on year 3 of Staley's defenses being an absolute train wreck. We're on like obviously Justin Herbert's going to have a good offense, and like we're on year 5 of the Vikings having the same exact offense year over year. They got a little bit unlucky with turnovers in the first couple of weeks. So how am I going to capitalize on that? It's twofold. Number one, we always talk about this, but it is worth mentioning. Games with especially bad defenses and good offenses, we're going to start to see lots of just in-game volatility. The market's going to react one way, but when a total has, it's a 54.5 point total and one team goes up 7-0, we can reasonably expect at some point in the game that's probably going to, be a tie game. The other point is, and I mean, I post this chart. I haven't yet this year, but every year it's like how well a team plays when they're leading comfortably. And every single year of the Kirk Cousins era, the Vikings are just in the bottom left quadrant of just a disastrous offense when they are leading. And I mean, how many times are we going to talk about the Chargers blowing, multiple score leads and making games close? They are very much in the same bracket of teams in the bottom left. And conversely, when we talk about teams who are really good at issuing comebacks, we've got the Vikings and Chargers. So add in just like your regular amount of this volatility of teams with really good offenses where we can score. That's always going to be kind of a systemic strategy of just like taking the other side. And I'm really going to be leaning in if we have a situation of 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter, 7-point lead, 10-point lead, whatever it is, really going heavy on the underdog on the assumption that this game is going to be a one-score game. These teams both can't hold leads and they're both really good coming from behind. I don't see this as one to attack before the game. Who knows how it's going to go? If it's going to come down to the last drive, let's kind of situate ourselves around that narrative.
Do you think so for this? I guess I'm trying to think of the different. Are you betting essentially whoever is losing? Is that that simple? I guess I feel bad about Minnesota in the lead, as do you. And there's obviously no reason to feel good about the Chargers in the lead. So is it like a first score, just bet the loser? Or are you doing that kind of throughout the game and trying to get a large kind of middle position?
Yeah, I'm going to try and build a large middle position. I'm more willing to wait in these sorts of games. I'm not just okay, team scores a drive, team scores touchdown on the opening drive, let's immediately bet the other side type of thing. I'll let a couple of drives pass through because we know what these teams are. And maybe there's a funky game script or something that happens early. And I'd rather start by possessions 6 through 15, just starting to really develop a middle position. That's sort of the game plan. And then really leaning in heavily towards the end, especially if I've already built up a certain position and I have some room for risk. That's kind of how I approach this sort of game. There's usually a couple of these every week. But I think this one really, really situates well for kind of the strategy of taking both sides and then leaning in towards the end of the game.
Yeah, by the way, that alt over 66.5 plus 355 is kind of interesting. What did we get this at? 51 on Sunday night. If you don't listen to the Sunday night podcast, you definitely should. Comes on live right after Sunday Night Football. And this week was closing line value week because we got the Rams at plus 6.5, and we got this total at 51. Now it won't end up mattering because some shit will happen as it usually does, but we give it a good, a valiant effort there. Any other live angles for us, or is it time for locks of the week?
Yeah, one more. Going back to our friend last year, fading the Titans on the scripted plays versus not. Ran a little bit of that code, and we found that the Broncos and Dolphins have gotten off to roaring starts, and I'm much more willing to buy that as signal, particularly because of who their offensive coaches are and who's calling the plays. We know Sean Payton's a great offensive mind. Obviously, Mike McDaniel has taken the league by storm. I expect this sort of, not to the same extent. The Broncos are 6 points per drive on the scripted plays. The Dolphins about 4.5. Both of those are the Broncos number 1, Dolphins number 2. I don't expect that to sustain itself, but I do expect it to be directionally correct. And I imagine we're going to get a pretty high total to start if we get opening drive touchdowns, especially because it's Dolphins can score at will. I'm going to be looking into some live unders, probably some live team total unders for the Broncos. I also think that the Vic Fangio defenses are going to start to get better as the season goes along. That's an angle I want to be playing. But yeah, I think that's kind of the broad thesis is just we're going to see some market moves from those scripted drives, and I don't think those are necessarily going to be as revealing as the later ones. So things like unders, and then depending on how the spread moves, if we can get Dolphins at 2.5 or 3.5, especially with how explosive their offense is, like that's the spot I'm going to want to be leaning into.
Yeah. Any live angles, anything on your end, Brad, that Judah didn't mention?
I swear he touched on everything that I had circled as like, these intrigue me. The guy he doesn't miss.
You're too nice. You're too nice. That's the real problem.
It's true.
It's
true.
Okay, well we're gonna get rid of that. We're gonna get to locks of the week. Before we do, DraftKings, you know it very, very well. DraftKings Sportsbook is making sure that you can keep up on the NFL action with a couple of great offers. New customers bet $5. Get $200 instantly in bonus bets. Throw 5 down on any of this week's epic matchups and walk away with an instant winner. We just gave you a few that we really liked. And so you can go capitalize putting $5 down and then get those bonus bets instantly. You don't actually have to wait. You get those bonus bets immediately, which is awesome. All customers can take advantage of 2 new offers every game day this September. Football is just more fun when you're in on the action. So download the app now, sign up with promo code PFF. New customers bet $5 and get $200 instantly in bonus bets only on the DraftKings Sportsbook with promo code PFF. Here we go. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net or email at Brad Spielberger. Brad Spielberger at pff.com. He's there to help you out. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, it's probably where Brad's going to have to move. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Brad's next employer, Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, licensee partner, Golden Nugget, Lake Charles, Louisiana. I'm not sure if you know this, but that's actually where Brad did his residency. 21 plus, age varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Don't go there, Brad. See sportsbook.draftkings.com/football terms for eligibility, terms, and responsible gaming resources. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. Eligibility and deposit restrictions apply. Was that mean enough, Brad? Do you think I should go?
It was more to the cities, I think, than me, but I'm sure they'll take that. Also, Lake Charles, Louisiana, a hidden gem. I'm being nice again, but it's a fact.
I'm sure it is. Relative to,
correct. Relative to Kansas.
Yeah, exactly. Boot Hill Casino and Resort. Okay, time for locks of the week. So here's what we do: we go around the horn. We give our favorite bets. We put the ones that we align on as our locks of the week. It's a little tongue in cheek. We had a super lock of the week as we've been doing each week this year. The first week it was Josh Dobbs under 210 passing yards. That was a not a sweat. Next week, last week it was TJ Hawkinson. That was a bit of a sweat. Shouldn't have been, but it did cash for us. So overall, it was a positive week. We got a little unlucky, I would say. We had Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert both over 2.5 passing touchdowns, both at plus odds, and both ended up with 2 passing touchdowns, which was a little unfortunate. So we're looking to get back on the schneid here. Oh, I didn't even mention we had Green Bay. I don't want to talk about Green Bay. Green Bay's dead to me. No longer be talked about on this podcast because of what they allowed the Atlanta Falcons. You let Desmond Ritter. Desmond Ritter has been awful as a quarterback, and they let him come back on him. Anyways, I'll stop ranting. So it is time for locks of the week. Let's start with you, Judah. What is your first submission?
Yeah, that was a perfect segue. I love the New Orleans Saints money line this week. Fade in the Packers. This is a two-sided play, I think, here, as ugly as it feels back in Derek Carr. The first is the Packers' success, I think, has been off the backs of lots of explosive plays and the situation that Matt LaFleur is putting his players in. If you look at things like perfect coverage rate, I think they're like forcing coverage mistakes on 80% of plays, which is incredible, also not sustainable, and does point to Matt LaFleur being a bit of an offensive whiz. But I think the matchup's going to be just a little bit tougher against New Orleans. I mean, even looking at their secondary right now, and they certainly have some talent on the edge players. But even if they do get Christian Watson to come back, even if they do have Aaron Jones coming back, it doesn't really affect the main thesis of like the deep balls and explosive plays they've been relying on are bound to regress. That's kind of why I'm looking to fade the Packers because they're certainly being propped up by that. On the New Orleans side, right, without Jamal Williams, I'm not exactly sure that the Saints are going to be comfortable giving Kendre Miller all the work. They're clearly not comfortable giving Jones much work at all. And I expect them to tilt to the pass in this spot. And with these weapons, I mean, Derek Carr is a guy who's going to be elevated by his surroundings. We've talked about that a bunch on this podcast, right? Getting back to our quarterback scrambling stuff, that he's the archetype of player who is situation dependent. He doesn't need to do a lot, especially if they get Rashid Shaheed on the field, which he has seen an increase in snap share. I mean, the dude is an absolute baller. If you look at, I just posted, the separation and his ability at the catch and after the catch. He's going to be top 5 in every category, deep, whatever it is. Chris Olave is a burgeoning star. Michael Thomas has come in. It's like 2018 again for him. It's really unbelievable what he's done coming off. What was it? Two full years of injuries? 3? I can't even remember at this point. It all blends into one. But we have a huge mismatch, I think, assuming that New Orleans goes to the air, and I think there's a really good chance they do, considering the injuries they have and Kamara still suspended. I just see the Saints as a better team. Fundamentally, the Packers, I think, are going to regress, and this is a spot where, especially because New Orleans is going to go to the air, they can just lean on their weapons, and that's exactly what Carr is built to do.
Like it. I am a little hesitant on the Saints. I don't know how that last second push makes you guys feel, but there's something about that team that their efficiency numbers look good. You can see why it makes sense. And then like something just doesn't click when it needs to click. And I feel like that's a trait of Derek Carr's. I don't know if you can look at that in your quarterback traits article, Judah. But like never quite living up to the efficiency numbers is a trait that Derek Carr certainly has. But I do think overall there's a lot of kind of value to be had. It's interesting. The spread is probably something that I am like least interested in taking, but perhaps a teaser could be interesting. Anyways, Brad, I'll go to you next.
Yeah, my thoughts just quick on Carr. The offensive line needs to get better. They've been pretty bad. But anyway, I'm starting things off, getting a little proppy with your guy, BCB, Brock Purdy, tomorrow night. Over 8.5 rushing yards. I really like this one. We've talked a lot about the interior matchups for a couple teams. I mean, the biggest mismatch in this entire game, well, besides the Niners against the Giants in most units, but is Dexter Lawrence and Leonard Williams against the interior of the Niners offensive line. In particular, and I hate bringing up his name again, but Spencer Burford had a 0 pass block grade last week, their right guard. They've had some issues on the interior. Yeah. At the same time, though, the Giants' edge rushers have done nothing. And I mentioned Azeez Ojulari is not going to play. I think Purdy's going to have to take off a couple of times where there's very quick interior pressure. We also maybe don't get Ayuk, who is his best early in the shot clock separator. Obviously, Debo's good behind the line of scrimmage and stuff like that. But if you want to throw a quick slant, I think that's Brandon Ayuk. So, yeah, good matchup in the trenches for the D-line of the Giants on the interior, making Brock run away. I think Trent Williams would still clear a whole big running lane for him, and he scrambles his way to over 8.5. Oh, one last thing. Wink Martindale blitzes more than, any defensive coordinator in the NFL. So they're going to bring pressure, and I think, Brock will scramble a couple times.
I do. Nothing makes me more excited than betting on Brock Purdy. I found something really interesting about Brock Purdy. Is Brock Purdy, I was looking at Deshaun Watson and Justin Fields' futility. Brock Purdy is the only guy in the NFL who's in the bottom 10 in big-time throws, but doesn't have a PFF grade below like 70. So like everyone that's bottom, 10 in big-time throws just stinks. And then there's Brock Purdy, shining beacon of Kyle Shanahan's light that, somehow bucks that trend. Okay, my first one is a teaser. So I kind of went back and forth on which I liked most. There are a couple of options, so I'm going to throw these out. I do think Saints, that the total on this game is 42.5. So Saints out to 8, I really think makes a ton of sense. The other kind of options for us here, the Jets from 2.5 to 8.5. I love teasers. I like most teaser legs. I could not hate a teaser leg more than the New York Jets teaser leg. Like that bucks every single part of the Wong hypothesis where, they are about as likely to lose by 14 as they are by 7. So I don't particularly like that one. One that is interesting to me is, and I wanted to ask you, Brad, about this, is the Joe Burrow thing. So, like Joe Burrow, I thought actually played better in the second half than he did in the first half. It was kind of hard to play worse. But, is he really going to sit? Like, is there really a chance that he sits?
Don't know. So they didn't practice, I guess, today because that is, or they didn't give out a report today for whatever reason, for that game. And I'm sorry, that is the Monday night game. That's what I was looking at. So that's one of the Monday night games. So they're actually, a day behind on the schedule. And it sounds like he's walking around with no boot in the locker room, like things like that. I don't know. He's not going to be fully healthy. And Aaron Donald's Aaron Donald, but I think he's going to play if I had to guess.
Okay. So I think that's a compelling one. I also like the Raiders out to 8.5 as well. And so those are the ones that I will kind of throw out there. I may or may not like this one the most, and that is the teaser leg of the Ravens down from 7.5 down to 1.5. They're playing the Colts. I think the Colts are a much better team than people expected, but still, I think, overrated, if that makes sense. And I use that word very, very lightly here, in that I just don't think we've seen them face a ton of challenge, right? They had a game against the Jacksonville Jaguars. They probably could have kept that one a little bit closer. I don't think the Jaguars have quite hit their stride yet. And then they got to play a Houston team that clearly just doesn't kind of have it. And then there's also the component of, is it going to be Gardner Minshew? Is it going to be Anthony Richardson? Anthony Richardson has played well enough where I'm definitely a bigger fan of them getting to play Gardner Minshew, especially with that kind of a defense. I think their defense sets up a lot better to kind of hold Gardner Minshew in check than it would for kind of the unknowns of Anthony Richardson. So I think the Saints out to 8 and the Ravens down to 1.5 will be my first lock of the week proposal. Judah, you're up next.
Yeah, I like Vegas minus 2.5 here. I think that we're still seeing the market kind of hesitating to price the Raiders offense as kind of a above average unit. I think this is my third straight week pitching them as such. But really where I think the value here comes is, I don't think that the Steelers are as bad as their numbers would suggest. I think it's a function of playing the Browns and Niners, who I would not that would be totally unsurprising if those are both top 5 defenses by the time the season closes. I think that's kind of propelling their numbers, but the Steelers also have some huge red flags, and I think like everyone's loving to like dump on Matt Canada, but like some kind of data to back that up. Looking at tight window throws, and I highlighted this, I believe, when we were talking about interception props, that we like actually had a really interesting sample last year where both Kenny Pickett and Mitch Trubisky both had extremely high rates of throwing into tight windows. Also for kind of a baseline of information, your chances of an interception are 6 times higher on throws into tight windows versus all other throws. And when you throw into tight windows, your expected points added would be equivalent to the worst team in the NFL. Not a good idea to throw into tight windows. Sometimes you have to, but the Steelers are doing it at an extremely high rate. And it's about 25%. We've seen this now a couple of years running. It's not a function of Kenny Pickett, I don't think. And if you just look at their wide receivers, I mean, they have no one who can separate, especially now that Deontay Johnson's out. George Pickens and Allen Robinson are both well below average. And I don't think you're going to kind of take advantage of the Raiders defense, which is really atrocious. But I don't think the Steelers are the team who's going to be able to take advantage of that, precisely because they run themselves out of basically a quarter of the plays from things like scheme. And I just don't see, kind of like, if we're projecting how good the Steelers offense is, I don't think it's as bad as they've been, but it's also, they're not going to be as kind of matchup dependent. And the other thing is, like, the Raiders offensive line's been terrific. I mean, like, they're really popping, and certainly in PFS numbers, like their perfect block percentage, essentially how many plays they have where the offensive lineman doesn't mess up. Of course, if you have 4 players on the offensive line doing their job, but one messes up, it doesn't really matter how good the other 4 players are, because that one guy who messed up is going to be allowing pressure. That's like the strength of the Steelers defense. If you can kind of limit their pass rush, I'm not exactly worried about Devontae Adams and Jacoby Myers separating against Levi Wallace and Patrick Peterson. I think they'll have their way. All of which is to say, to kind of summarize the main points here, the matchup really sets up well for the Raiders, and I don't think they're kind of being given their credit as a above average kind of like 12 to 16 type offense.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. I am pro Raiders. I was pro Raiders last week. It got out to a good start. It did not finish. I think my take on the Raiders is if the team they're playing is a low scoring team, like I really like, generally the way that they can compete. If it's a high scoring team, that's not how they're built from an offensive perspective, or at least yet until Jimmy G gets his what together. Brad, you're up next.
Yeah, so I'll go back to the well. I know we got burned last week on the touchdown props, and yeah, I'm going double prop before I even get to a game. You guys are covering the games well enough. So our guy Sam Howell, over 1.5 touchdowns is plus 175 is where I saw it at I think DraftKings. I forget where I was looking when I saw this, but nevertheless, we talked about a lot of this already. I think he's going to have a good amount of time in the pocket. I like the matchups of his receivers against a kind of shaky Bills secondary with corners that haven't played well and with two safeties that are in their mid-30s, and one of which, in Micah Hyde, I don't think is going to play in this game. And then, of course, the Bills are going to be able to score, so Howell is going to be pushing the ball downfield, trying to throw touchdowns. I love that one, frankly.
That's like my favorite one thus far. And it goes back to Judah's point that he made during the same game parlay conversation. Okay, I've got a player prop for next one. I think this may be my favorite one. I went to a tight end on Thursday night last week. I'm going to a tight end on Thursday night this week. No Brandon Ayuk. If he's playing, I think he's a little banged up. I don't think he sees his normal target share. You mentioned the interior pressure. I'm not worried about the edge defenders, so I don't think George Kittle is going to be staying in to block. Likes to blitz a lot. I think that opens some things up for Kittle. It's a Thursday night game. It's their home opener. George Kittle is the face of that offense. As much as you want to say about Deebo Samuel, people love George Kittle. I think this is a George Kittle game. The New York Giants were the team last year that we bet against with TJ Hawkinson in that playoff lock of the week. Same thing with Dallas Goedert. They this year ranked 24th in PFF grade covering tight ends. So I love it. I'm going with over 50 yards. That's plus 110 on George Kittle. Over 60 is plus 174. If you guys want to talk me into that, I will listen. Plus 60 yards was what we did with TJ Hawkinson last week. But I love George Kittle tomorrow. I think, yes, they obviously are going to win this game and should do so handily. But I think George Kittle is the number one target for Brock Purdy in this game.
Some things never change, and that's the Giants getting absolutely shredded by tight ends. I mean, I feel like this has been true for 15 years. Jason Witten, 17 receptions against the Giants. Probably happened twice. So I definitely like that one. The last one I've got, we've talked about this one in our same game parlay context. It's just going to be the Eagles minus 4.5. I think these teams are in fundamentally different tiers. Yes, I know that they're on the road. I want to be fading that. I don't think this should be anything short of 7. I mean, the Eagles have their question marks, absolutely, but they also have such a high base of success because they can really lean on their run game. Their offensive line is so good. The threat of a Hurts run and the gravity he pulls really elevates this team. And if the team loads the box and great, try and cover Devonta Smith and AJ Brown one-on-one, good luck with that. I just see the base rate of success so much higher for the Eagles, really fading kind of the Bucs winning 2 games in which this opponent could not be any more different on defense. These teams should just not be within 7 points in my view.
I was actually thinking about that when you were sorry, real quick, Brad, when you were talking about this game originally. I don't think we have these up yet. I'm looking. No. What are your thoughts on what an interception prop will be like for Baker? What do you think? What odds are we going to get there?
I would say it's going to be decently juiced to the over. I would say we'll get minus 120, but I could be very wrong on that.
Okay. I do think we don't have any odds on there, so we can't pick it yet, but definitely one for us to think about. Okay. Eagles minus 4.5. Brad, any more?
Got just one last one, and I guess I'm not taking any spreads today, but I did have Raiders and Eagles. So last one is an over. We talked about it on Sunday. It's the Falcons Lions over. Yeah, maybe you were going to go there as well. I do want to maybe keep an eye on Amon-Ra St. Brown. It does matter because that's kind of part of the play here. The Falcons have D. Alford, an undrafted guy from last year, as their starter in the slot. I think he got hurt in the game against Green Bay because I was looking at his data. Only played 25 snaps and didn't play the whole game, but also maybe they're just rotating guys. I haven't watched that film yet. But anyway, so that's a huge part of the mismatch where AJ Terrell, erasing Marvin Jones doesn't really matter. Or AJ Terrell, I guess Josh Reynolds did ball out yesterday or last weekend. But anyway, so that's a big part of it. The Lions also got absolutely carved on the ground against Kenneth Walker. He was forcing missed tackles like crazy, bowling over guys, tons of yards after contact. It was, I think Dan Campbell kind of called out the linebacker core. It was kind of veiled, but I basically think he said like they stunk. And so I think Bijan Robinson is going to go nuclear as well, break off maybe, a huge gainer. Yes, pace of play is not great for Atlanta. Yes, they can't really throw, but the Lions defense is not particularly good. You have two offensive lines that I think are mismatches against the two defensive lines they're playing. Craig McCorkle, I can tell you how the Lions are really, really bad. Yeah, it moved 1.5 against me. But anyway, I stand by it. Atlanta Falcons, until further notice, might stink.
I'm with you on that. I love that over. It's funny. The reason I smiled is because I have an over, but I actually knew you were going to say that one, and I didn't want to be like, "Hey, Brad, I had the exact same idea as you." I wanted to actually have some originality to me, Brad. Unlike yourself, who you copied my facial hair. It's getting a little ridiculous. I'm really trying to lead into the heel. How do you think I'm doing? You think I feel like I'm
too far.
I'm
too far.
That was.
It got personal.
There we go. People will remember how much fun I made of Eric when he owed me like 15 steak dinners at one point. And after one podcast, if we had to have a conversation about that. So totally understand. Okay, I have two more actually. The first is I'll get my over out of the way, which is actually going back. We've hammered this game. So the Bills Commanders total is at 43.5. It's gone down. Now, there is a chance of rain here. Okay, so I think that's why it's going down. And this is kind of me fading the weather forecast a little bit, which is like, okay, we know that there's a little bit of being erratic with weather forecasts. If it is like super rainy, does that really mean that these teams are like gonna, they have Josh Allen, Sam Howell? Like, what else are you gonna do with those quarterbacks besides try and score some points? So I think this one is interesting. I wanted to get your guys' read on it. Obviously, Judah, you're probably closer to that area of the country, and so maybe you have a keener sense of what sort of weather system is moving towards us. But it's 43.5. The Washington Commanders are a big underdog. If they are losing in this game, like what chance do they have besides throwing the football? That is where their advantage is. And the Bills obviously put up a ton of points last week, and I think have found sort of their offense once again. And I don't think there's anyone that's really going to be able to cover our guy Stephon Diggs. So that was my total, but I realized that there's rain projected, so I wanted to get your guys' take on that.
Yeah. I probably shouldn't say this because I think there's a ton of edge, but I love our printing press members here. There's been a lot of research about passing games and weather. The only thing that affects the passing game is wind, rain, and wind in like 10 to 15 sort of direction. Like rain does not affect the passing game. If that pushes the total down, amazing. Let's pile on more. Wind is the only thing that affects the passing game. There's been a ton of research on this, and it happens every single year. People pile on, and like books move, the sharp money, aka the people who are betting, and just like it's a bad narrative. It's not backed up by data. Like, give me all of the rain games. It affects the defense as much as it affects the offense. It's wind that affects the passing game, and in the 15 plus rain. I paid so much of the weather. Granted, if it's a complete monsoon, we've probably seen like one or two of those games, but like a regular rain does not affect the passing game.
George knows how much I love wind. George, I love that whole segment from Judah right there. I'm the big So on that note, I'll just real quick. I am seeing low winds in that game, but nothing that's problematic. Now that you brought it up, just because you did mention the Saints earlier, in Saints Green Bay, it looks like we're going to get sustained 15-mile-an-hour with gusts over 25 miles an hour. That is potentially, impacted by some wind.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So the weather report, high of 72, real feel 73, perfect temperature on Sunday, September 24th. The expected rain is 0.16 inches. Probability of participation is 70%. Now, there are potential wind gusts of up to 20 miles per hour, but the wind is going to be under 10 miles per hour. I believe this game is, what time does this game kick off? This is a 1 p.m. Kickoff, yeah. Okay, so around 1 p.m. Let's see here. What are they projecting? I guess 1 p.m. could be where, if there is precipitation, where most of it is coming. But yeah, it really doesn't sound that scary. Like the afternoon here actually has 0 inches of rain projected. So
I'm also seeing the wind to go down. Sorry, I'm seeing the wind go down over the course of the game as well.
There you go. This is it.
So, yeah,
welcome to your Sunday weather forecast for Commanders and Bills. Okay, my last one, I'll make this quick, is we talked about this on Sunday. The New England Patriots playing the New York Jets. This is now 2.5, which I think is interesting. I have overall been impressed with the New England Patriots offense. I think what Bill O'Brien has done there is impressive. Somehow they are 0-2, right? I think we've talked about this with what Timo has done with the noise canceled scores, and they should have won that game. I think against Philadelphia, if it weren't for some really kind of crappy luck, their defense is going to give Zach Wilson just a world of pain. I think they find a way to score in this game, and I think people are reacting to, wow, the Jets defense has been really good, and it was amazing. But there's only so much you can do when your quarterback is throwing touchdowns to the other team. And I think that is probably what's likely to happen. Zach Wilson, it's like really, really painful, is just by far the worst. So yeah, really, really tough spot for him. So I like them -2.5 in New York. Bill Belichick owns that stadium. All right. That's where we're at. Before we figure out what our locks of the week are going to be, one last thing that I want to tell people about, and that is Fabric by Gerber Life. If you are a member of a family, you probably want to protect them during this football season because you never know what could happen. Tropical storms heading all over the place. So go get yourself some great term life insurance to make sure your family is protected. You want it to be high quality, so if something happens to you, your family is in good shape, and you can rest easy. You can watch some games, worry about the weather, all that fun stuff. And it's not very hard to find a great quote. Fabric by Gerber Life makes it really, really easy. It takes 10 minutes. All you've got to do is go to meetfabric.com/forecast. That's 2 E's, a T, fabric, fabric.com/forecast to get started. You go from start to cover in less than 10 minutes. And if it's raining outside, that's very helpful for you as well. So go do that, meetfabric.com/forecast. Okay, what do we like the most? Start with you, Brad. What are the ones that stuck out to you?
I'm just going to jump in and be mean because we've been gotten that request. I don't like the Kittle one because I think the Giants might score 0 points, and so then we're just like, we won Hawkinson because the Vikings had to keep throwing to the literal bitter end. I'm just afraid we get Giants Cowboys in Giants 49ers, and there's just no reason to throw to George Kittle. So I know that's not what you asked, but I just want to be mean to you out of the gate.
I think that's what we need. That's the type of creative tension that's going to make our locks better. No, I think that's a really good call out, and that would be my worry with that bet as well. Although Daniel Dimes was on fire against the Cardinals, slightly different defense that he's facing. Okay, so we'll take the Kittle one off. Judah, where's your head at? What are the ones you like the most?
Yeah,
or the ones
I like the Washington Buffalo over. I think that's one of my favorite spots. Like, especially because even if we're a little bit wrong on the Sam Howell stuff, like the Bills' offense is going to score, and I think there's only kind of upside from the Washington side. Like if they keep pace, then I think there are lots of different types of game scripts in which they hit, especially if people are fading this because of the rain. Now I'm really riled up because of that. I like the over.
That's great. I'm on board with that. I'll say, Brad, can you remind me of the two props you mentioned at the top?
Yep. First one was Purdy over 8.5 rushing yards, and the second was Sam Howell over 1.5 touchdowns plus 175. I think we clearly love scoring in Bills Washington in many different ways. I think we should take the over, but those were the two.
Yeah. So I was trying to remember what the first one is. We haven't done a quarterback rushing prop in far too long.
Okay.
It is time to bring it back. Brock Purdy's our guy. We need something in that game.
A word of caution with betting quarterback props. Say they have a lead in the fourth quarter.
The Niels.
I don't know, maybe need them to stay at 80 rushing yards or something, and they go under. There is definitely got to pay attention to the Neal equity here.
Not that you have any experience in that regard.
No, never have any experience with that. But hypothetically, one should take into account that this rushing yard prop is actually probably there's some natural juice to the over already, because the market's gonna be pricing in a median that's not accounting for the Neal equity, and that's obviously extremely high in this game.
No, it ties right into the Kittle idea. We need him to have 12 yards before the last 5 minutes of the game. Otherwise, it's probably a loser. We're not betting 8.5. We're betting right.
Yeah, I have the same worry, which is just if this game gets out of hand, the Niners are perfectly willing to just have Purdy drop back 15, 20 times, in which case he doesn't get enough opportunity to run. Where it's you're kind of betting it on the first couple of quarters, unless of course the game script calls for the Niners to pass more, in which case we're going to have a beautiful live rushing play, kind of building in exactly this thesis, and just take the 4.5 when it's hung in the second quarter and the game's actually surprisingly tied or a 3-point lead or whatever it is.
George, we'll get back to the QB props, but I agree with the logic there. We'll get a QB rushing prop soon. That is our bread and butter. We'll get back to it.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I actually, the one that I forgot to mention here, what do we think on Bryce Young stuff? Do we know?
So he didn't practice today. I think it's an ankle. I think he'll be fine. Obviously finished the game against the Saints. I love Bryce Young. I think Andy Dalton is at half point better than Bryce Young as of today, or whatever value you want to put on it. But yeah.
If you could tell me that Andy Dalton was playing, I would take Carolina +6 right now.
Right. I think it's fair.
Yeah. So, okay. Brad, we'll take Purdy off. What else are you feeling? You've so far.
I like -4.5. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry to cut you off. Eagles -4.5. I don't get it. I think last time I said I don't get it was Seattle week 1 probably. But anyway, I just don't really understand this here. I get Tampa's had a good start. They're 25th in success rate on offense. They've played maybe the 2 worst defenses in the NFL. We talked about Baker Mayfield at the top of the show. Eagles are coming off a Thursday, so they can get healthy. Obviously had a couple injuries there. I like Darius Slay on Mike Evans. There's just, I like Philadelphia a lot. This is a massive step up in class for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yeah, I'm a fan. I was going to mention that one. Do we have any appetite for any teasers?
What was the Raiders and the Saints?
So yeah, I like the Saints. You mentioned the wind gusts there. I feel like obviously that does hurt scoring a little bit. So getting them out to 8. I mean, the Saints just feel like they are a team that they're not going to cover by much, and you feel like if they're losing, we haven't seen them losing yet. But if they are, you've got that Derek Carr. Oh yeah, I'll get us close enough, but not quite over the hump there. And I agree with you in terms of the Saints defense being a robust unit, probably less likely than what the Packers have faced thus far, certainly to, completely fall apart, right? Think about who the Packers have played thus far. Packers have played the Bears. We know what a nightmare they are. And the Falcons, who are a fine defense. But I think it makes more, and remember, they only scored, towards 20 points, 21 points in that game. It wasn't quite as pretty. So, I think that one is compelling. I get on board with the Raiders, certainly out to 8.5, out to +8.5. I like
It's
you know,
reading that
they're
one wrong.
minus 2.5.
Yeah, they're
we
minus
gotta take that
2.5.
one off.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. That makes sense.
Were you thinking Ravens minus 7.5? Is that what you were thinking?
Yeah.
Yes, that's what I meant to say.
Yeah. I was confused for a while. I was like, I think the Raiders are laying 2.5.
Yeah, no, I said Raiders instead of Ravens.
Oh, okay.
You said Raiders, and that's why I said.
Yeah, it was me. It's not me. Yeah. But I definitely like that play.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, let's add that in. Anyone else? We have a 3-pack thus far. Is that right? Okay. So unless I'm hearing anything else, we are going with a Saints out to 8, Ravens down to 1.5, minus 1.5 teaser. We have the Washington Commanders, Buffalo Bills over 43.5. We are fading the rain. And last but not least, we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at home getting beat by more than 4.5 against the Philadelphia Eagles in a return to sanity for Baker Mayfield. Those are the locks of the week. We will announce which one is a super lock. We got to talk about it. We get Arjun involved. Which one do we like the most? Put a little more on that, and we'll talk about that. You'll find it in the Discord, and you can find that link in the description as well as on our Twitter accounts. Okay. I want to say this for the end. Those of you that have been participating in the Set the Lines, Guess the Lines weekly contest, we want to share these out on Sundays going forward. But for this week, we're going to be sharing it out on the Wednesday show. So here's what we do. I'll go ahead and share the leaderboard here. This is from week 2. So what we did is we ranked all of the entries in 3 different dimensions. How good were you at guessing the market opening line based on the difference in win probability that your line had to the market? So, there's a difference between crossing 3 and crossing 5, and that's what this measures here. So how close are you to the actual number? The number that you guessed right on the nose, so the total that you had that were directly on market. And then what we wanted to do is we wanted to kind of have a reason for you to be different, right? You don't just want to guess the market exactly unless you really believe it, because if you do, then you have no, edge, right? So no angle. So what we did is we allocated 10 units to every single entry each week, and then your units are dispersed across all of the differences that you have. So let me show you an example here. This is my scorecard from week 2, and you can see that I had 6 correct guesses. My places where I was different, I allocated units, I risked those units, and then I won some, I lost some. So my biggest difference was Kansas City, Jacksonville. I had Kansas City as a 3.5 point favorite. The market was at 2.5. That crosses 3. That's why it was the biggest win probability difference. And I wagered, risked 2.2 units. We're assuming minus 110. So I won 2. And so that is kind of how we're scoring it here. So you can see what the leaderboard looks like here. This is then averaging the 3 metrics here: win probability, on market, and the units that you ended up winning for a composite ranking. So SFAC Craig with a really fantastic, he was top 10 in all 3, which is really impressive. Meigs ND almost there, was 11th in total on market, but again, really solid across the board. We've got to shout out Arjun, who beat all of us, which was impressive. Really good at both being on market where he needed to be and where he was different. He did well. Additionally, winning some units. I crept up there into the top 10, which I'm hanging a banner for. And I think what is cool about the contest, and I'll shut up here in a second. But what I think is cool is that you can't just, win by kind of going and looking up the market lines being totally on the market lines. So you see the person, Chiefs Walter picks was the most accurate in terms of getting on market, but wasn't able to capitalize in terms of, where they were different. And the thing is, if you're on market with everything, but off market on just one, then you're kind of putting all of your eggs into one basket. So it sort of behooves you to, not look ahead, I guess, at the look ahead lines. Any comments from you guys before we look at week 3?
I just think it's interesting. Obviously my guesses were not on the market, but they did pretty well in actually winning the bets. I'm guessing my Arizona +3 came through for me because they covered the hypothetical +3.
We'll take a look. Yeah, you won more. You were more successful than I in actually winning anything. Here we go. Look at this. This is Excel wizardry here. So your biggest position actually was on the Giants against the Cardinals, which ended up being a stone cold lock.
Oh, I guess
had we
yeah.
Had we known, I think we were all on the other side of Chicago, Tampa Bay, and that didn't quite come through for us. But this is how the leaderboard looks. If you are not participating yet, you absolutely should. We'll be sending out your the leaderboards to you directly to your email and your scorecards, so you can take a look at it. And we're going to try and compile them kind of week over week. I just need to find some time to do that. Judah, let me see if I can. What happened to you here? Let's find.
So I was 28th in composite. I was.
Okay, here it is.
Maybe.
Throw the damn ball. So positive in winnings. That's all that really, at the end of the day.
I'll be honest. I really try and set the line to what I think they should be. So to like guessing what I think the market's going to be is actually not how I approach it. But that should hopefully as time goes on help in the units won and lost category.
One more takeaway. I think Sean McVay right there. It says he had Rams +7.5. You see that?
Don't do that. Don't do that to me.
S. McVay.
Oh my God. Well, I think it's a good point, Judah, because that's kind of the give and take of this. And I would say the way that I have come to approach it is I think about where I believe the market will be, and it's one of the inputs. So, I don't go into this and go, let me try and guess what the market is at as my end goal. I go, what do I think the market is at? And then do I differ from that? And where would I place it? Where would I make it? Because to your point, like the goal is not necessarily just to guess the market, because then what are you going to do? But when you do agree with the market, you want to agree with the market, and where you do differ, you want to differ. So I think it's a really good point, and I agree. I do think it'll be successful over time. So okay, that is week 2. Let me see here. I have the early look ahead at week 3. So here are the accuracy numbers. We obviously don't know units won or lost quite yet. Arjun is in the top spot right now. That did not bode well for last week's most accurate setter of lines. So we'll see if that helps or hurts here. Now, see, look, here you are, Judah, pretty
too
accurate.
High.
Yeah, this is way too high for you. I don't know what's going on. I'm really actually disgusted with myself here because I kind of like to be like you, and I like to be a little more off and kind of distribute my disagreements across the board. But anyways, here it is. Wanted to share this kind of live. You obviously, if you are a part of the contest, we'll get this emailed to you. And if you haven't joined yet, you absolutely should go and get involved. We'll tweet it out on Sundays when the form opens. Usually we tweet it out after the games start. Been doing it in the second slate of games. We might try and do it earlier this week to get more people involved. And if you need to join, to find that link, you can go join the Discord so that you can participate. That was our podcast, fellas. Appreciate you both. Appreciate you all for listening. We love you, and we will see you on Sunday night live after Steelers Raiders on Sunday night. Peace.